So now let's have the second part of our lesson, which is the reflexive pronoun and intensive pronoun. So just a quick review, what is a pronoun? So pronoun again is a word used to substitute a noun. Okay, so reflexive and intensive pronouns are like identical twins. However, though they look the same, they are actually different. Okay, so we're going to find out what is a reflexive pronoun and what is intensive pronoun and how they are used in the sentences. Okay, so reflexive and intensive pronouns are words that end in self for singular, like for example, himself, herself, myself, and selves for plural, like for example, themselves. All right. So again, while they resemble one another, the reflexive and intensive pronoun play a very different roles in sentences. So for example, Jenny bought herself a dress. So herself here is a pronoun that can be reflexive or intensive depending on how it is used in the sentence. All right. Next we have my father himself paid for my shoes. Okay. So himself is our pronoun. And again, it can be intensive. It can also be reflexive. All right. So next is the Robinsons were annoying neighbors. They kept inviting themselves over to our house. So themselves is a noun, or rather a pronoun that can be also reflexive or intensive. All right, so we're going to find out which of these sentences are reflexive and which are intensive. All right. Let's discuss first the reflexive pronoun. So when you say reflexive, it sounds like reflection, all right? And when you say reflection, it is the image in the mirror that bounces back at you. So same with a reflexive pronoun, it reflects back to the subject. It can be used as the direct object, indirect object, or object of prepositions, okay? So here, reflexive pronouns are objects that refer to the subject. Okay, so reflexive is reverts the subject or it refers to the subject. All right. So here are some examples of reflexive pronouns. So I dress myself. Okay, so myself here is a reflexive pronoun because it refers to the subject, which is I. Okay, so myself is used as direct object. So I dress who? Myself. Okay, so myself and I refers to the same person. Okay, next is she dresses herself. So again, herself here is an is a direct object and it refers to the subject she. All right. Next, he dresses himself. Okay, again, he dresses himself. So himself is a reflexive pronoun that refers to the subject he, and we dress ourselves. All right, so ourselves refers to the subject, which is we. Okay, so reflexive pronouns are used when the subject and the object are the same. All right. Okay, now let's have some more examples. So first we have I treated myself at the buffet restaurant. So subject here is I, and our reflexive pronoun is myself. Okay, so myself here acts as an object. So myself refers to I, which is the subject of the sentence. Okay, so that's why it is a reflexive pronoun. So next we have the boy wrote himself a letter. So subject, boy, himself is our reflexive pronoun and wrote is our verb. Alright, so himself and boy are the same person. Okay, next we have the monkey hangs itself in the trees. So monkey here is the subject and our reflexive pronoun is itself. Hangs is our verb, and of course, itself refers to the monkey, which is the subject of the sentence. So again, reflexive pronoun when the subject and the object refers to the same person or thing. So that is reflexive pronoun. Okay. So again, when the subject and the object refers to the same person, use reflexive pronoun. So like for example, Claire is looking at Claire. So when we use pronouns here, it will become she is looking at herself. So that is reflexive pronoun. And now we have the intensive pronouns. Okay, so intensive is like intense, and something intense is very strong. So an intensive pronoun are the same words used to emphasize or intensify the subject of the sentence. So it usually appear right near the subject. So subject followed by intensive pronoun. And unlike the reflexive pronoun, intensive pronouns can be omitted from the sentence without changing its meaning. So it is not necessary. You can omit the intensive pronoun in a sentence. Okay? So here, intensive pronoun again are used to emphasize a noun or pronoun. Alright, so let's have some examples. So now let's have some examples for intensive pronouns. So first we have my mother herself paid for my shoes. So our subject here is mother. Our intensive pronoun is herself. So herself here is referring to mother, which is the subject of the sentence. So it intensify or emphasize the subject mother. All right. So I have here example number two rather, which is my mother paid for my shoes. So I omit the intensive pronoun herself. So take a look with these two sentences. So even though I omit the intensive pronoun herself, the sentence doesn't change its meaning. Alright? Okay, so mother is the subject. Okay, so let's have number 3 examples. We ourselves wrote the letter of request. So subject, we have we. Intensive pronoun ourselves. Okay? And ourselves here gives emphasis with our subject we. Okay? It emphasizes or intensify our subject we, but we can omit this intensive pronoun without changing the meaning of the sentence. So let's try. We wrote the letter of request. So you see, the sentence doesn't change its meaning. Alright, so again, the function of intensive pronoun is to emphasize or intensify the subject. Okay. So let's differentiate intensive and reflexive pronoun with some examples. Okay. So we have here, he had to force himself to work out each morning in order to achieve his fitness goals. So himself here is our reflexive pronoun. Okay, so let's have example number 2. He had to force to work out each morning in order to achieve his fitness goals. So I removed himself. So do you see how the sentence changed, or how the sentence without a reflexive pronoun does not make sense? So in sentence number 2, the reader is left wondering who was forced to work out each morning. All right? So reflexive pronoun here is essential in every sentence because it acts as a direct object, or it can be indirect object or object of preposition. So unlike intensive pronoun that it can be removed without changing the meaning of the sentence. So let's see the intensive pronoun. Okay, so let's have intensive pronouns. So first, she completed the marathon herself without the help of anyone. So herself here is intensive pronoun because it intensifies our subject, she. Okay, so let's have example number 2. Let's omit herself in the sentence. She completed the marathon without the help of anyone. So do you see how the meaning of the sentence stays the same, whether there is an intensive pronoun or it does not have, right? So herself here can be omitted. It is not necessary. All right, so again, reflexive pronoun is essential in a sentence while intensive pronoun can be omitted. It is not necessary. Okay, so let's practice. So let's practice. We're going to find out if the pronoun used in the sentence is reflexive or intensive. Okay, so we have sentence number 1. She convinced herself to enroll in all AP courses next school year. So here our pronoun rather is herself. Okay, and of course it acts as a direct object. So she convinced who? Herself. Therefore, sentence number 1 or the pronoun in sentence number 1 is reflexive pronoun. Okay? And if we omit herself in this sentence, it will become she convinced to enroll in all AP courses next school year. So it does not make sense. You will be wondering, she convinced who? Okay? Alright, so that is a reflexive pronoun. Next, we have, in Matilda, Bruce is forced to eat an entire chocolate cake himself. Okay, so our pronoun here is himself, and our subject is Bruce. Bruce is forced to what? So you cannot say himself, but the answer is to eat. Therefore, himself here is not an object, rather is not a direct object, or indirect object or object of preposition. Therefore, it is an intensive pronoun. So why? Because we can omit himself without changing the meaning of the sentence. Okay? And himself here only intensify or emphasize our subject, Bruce. So let's check, or let's omit himself. In Matilda, Bruce is forced to eat an entire chocolate cake. So you see, the sentence does not change its meaning or thought. So therefore, himself in sentence number 2 is an example of intensive pronoun. All right, so let's have sentence number 3. Drew decided to treat himself to a fancy dinner. Okay, so our pronoun is himself. Now let's omit himself. Drew decided to treat to a fancy dinner. So it is, something is missing. Drew decided to treat who? Himself. So himself here acts as a direct object. Therefore, it is a reflexive pronoun. So it refers to Drew. Okay. So next we have sentence number 4. She lost herself in the overwhelming beauty of the enchanted forest. So our pronoun here is herself. Okay. And herself here act as a direct object. She lost who? Herself. Therefore, Herself refers to the subject she, and it is it is a reflexive pronoun. Okay, so we cannot omit herself here because it is it is an indirect object. Oh, sorry, that is direct object rather. All right, so she lost herself. So herself here is direct object. Okay, so let's have sentence number 4. We ourselves are the ones who make the greatest impact upon the world we live in. Again, so we ourselves are the ones who make the greatest impact upon the world we lived in. So ourselves is our pronoun and it acts as an intensive pronoun. Why? Because it intensify or emphasize our subject we. And of course, we can omit it without changing the meaning or thought of our sentence. So let's try. We are the ones who make the greatest impact upon the world we lived in. So you see, the sentence remains the same. All right. So again, reflexive pronoun is essential in the sentence and it refers to the subject, while intensive pronoun is not essential, not necessary. You can omit it in the sentence without changing the meaning or thought of a sentence. And of course, reflexive pronoun is right after the verb because it acts as direct object, indirect object, or object of preposition. While intensive pronoun can be seen right after the subject, like for example in sentence number 5. So we ourselves. And of course, it can be also found at the end of the sentence, like for example, sentence number 2. Okay? So that is a reflexive and intensive pronoun. This is all for today. So for your ILT, please refer to your Genio account. So goodbye everyone. Have a nice day.